That means the book belonged to George. We, or our class, studies vectors. Our is the possessive. The class belongs to us. You also use the possessive case before a gerund. Now, recall that a gerund is the form of a verb that acts as a noun. We use the possessive pronoun to show who is performing the action of the gerund. For example, her swimming has improved greatly. Her is the possessive case of the pronoun. Swimming is the gerund. Or we could say, Dave was tired of his studying after 10 minutes. His is the pronoun in the possessive case, and studying is our gerund. Here are some more examples. You, your, and your. Reading helps you stay informed. Well, you is in the nominative and the objective case. Your is in the possessive case. And your is really the contraction you are. So that's an entirely different word. That's a contraction. That's not a case issue. So I know I don't want the nominative. I know I don't want the objective. I know I want the possessive because I have the gerund there, reading. So the correct answer is your. Number 2, I have him, his, or he. Well, him is in the objective, his is the possessive, he is the nominative. Wearing a hat helped keep him warm. Well, wearing is my gerund, so I'm looking for something that's in the possessive case. Only his is in the possessive case. So my sentence reads, his wearing a hat helped keep him warm. Last one, do you mind my or me borrowing your calculator? Borrowing is my gerund, so I've got to find something that's in my possessive case, and that would be my borrowing, because me is in the objective. Now be careful here because it may not sound right to your ear because you're used to hearing it wrong. So if you're not sure, rather than going by your ear, go by the correct form. So take a look at the sentence and say, okay, I've got a gerund here, I've got a this here, I've got a that here. Figure it out structurally, and you know you'll be correct. We use certain possessive pronouns alone to indicate ownership or possession. So we might say the calculator is mine, not yours. Take another look at the sentence again. Mine is the possessive pronoun. Me is in the objective case. We've got yours and yours. The first yours is a real word. It's the possessive case. The second yours is not a word. I put that in just to sort of trick you a little bit. There would be no apostrophe ever in the word yours. There wouldn't be one after the S. There wouldn't be one before the S. So you can eliminate that immediately because that's not even a word. In number 2, is this book his or he's? His is correct. That's the possessive. He's is a contraction. He is. Well, that wouldn't make any sense at all. Is this book he is? Makes no sense. And number 3, no, it is theirs or theirs with the apostrophe. Just as there's no yours with an apostrophe, there is never any theirs with an apostrophe. So that has to be wrong from the beginning. So the correct answer is theirs, the first word, with no apostrophe. I've mentioned this briefly, but I want to go over it again because it's so important. Don't confuse possessive pronouns with contractions. Remember, a contraction is a shorter form of a word. You take out letters and you put the apostrophe where the letters have been removed. So it apostrophe s is a contraction for it is. The possessive pronoun is its with no apostrophe. Your, you apostrophe re, is a contraction for you are. Your, without the e, without the apostrophe, is the possessive pronoun. Their, they are, is the contraction. Their, their, is the possessive pronoun. And whose, who apostrophe s, is a contraction for who is. Whose, W-H-O-S-E is the possessive pronoun. One other word on this before we leave it. There, and there. The first one, T-H-E-Y apostrophe, R-E is the contraction, they are. The second, T-H-E-I-R, is the possessive pronoun, and T-H-E-R-E, entirely separate word, indicates place, as in over there. Do not confuse those three words. Also, I want to go back to a few others. I-T-S, your, and whose. Some people create their own words. They have I-T-S apostrophe. We've seen Y-O-U-R-S apostrophe. Can't do it, guys. Just take a look at the way they are here. This is all you have. You cannot add apostrophes. So now what I would like you to do is pause the program and circle the correct pronoun in each sentence, and then come back. The first two show possession, the second two show gerund, and the last one is used alone. Possession. The teacher asked for their homework. The homework belonged to them, so I'm using T-H-E-I-R. I'm not using they, and I'm not using the contraction they are. It might help you if you actually say the contraction as the two words. So if you say the teacher asked for they, their, and they are homework, you'll hear it then more easily. Number two, your, and I'm going to use my trick, you are grades have been outstanding. Well, once I do that, I can hear it. Your grades have been outstanding. I need the possessive pronoun because the grades belong to you. With the gerund, number three, I spoke to him about him driving. Well, the gerund is driving, so I need the possessive form. She and her acting is excellent. Acting is the gerund, so I need the possessive her. Using the possessive pronoun alone, is the ticket hers or hers? And we said earlier that you cannot add apostrophes, so reading it again, is the ticket hers or not a word? It has to be the first choice. Punctuation, especially apostrophes, is one of the trickiest elements of writing. Video-aided instruction has a great program on punctuation. It's called English Grammar Punctuation, and it'll teach you the ins and outs of using commas, semicolons, colons, apostrophes, dashes, and other marks of punctuation comfortably and correctly. But in this program, we'll address two of the most common punctuation mistakes: using commas correctly with introductory and interrupting phrases, compound sentences and items in a list, and using apostrophes correctly to show possession with nouns and pronouns. I highly recommend that you use that other program, English Grammar Punctuation. If you're finding that you're not really sure how to use punctuation, or your papers are coming back with a lot of red marks on them because you're not sure about the rules of standard English punctuation. Now let's take a look at using commas with introductory phrases and interrupting phrases. Introductory phrases obviously come at the beginning of sentences, and interrupting phrases obviously interrupt the sentence by coming in the middle. First, use a comma after a long prepositional phrase or a dependent clause that introduces a sentence. You may have heard this guideline: use the comma where you would take a breath. Unfortunately, that's not really reliable. And it's one of those things that's become commonly known, but you're much better off figuring out if you have a prepositional phrase or a dependent clause. So let's take a look at these. In the first few lines of the second chapter, well, I know that that's a prepositional phrase because I have that preposition in. And it's long. So I can say, okay, this makes sense to me. In the first few lines of the second chapter, comma, the author begins to refer to his main character by the nickname Freddy. The second one, although typical lizards have 4 legs ending in clawed toes, comma, Several types of lizards have reduced limbs or no limbs at all. I said earlier, use a comma after a long prepositional phrase or a dependent clause that introduces a sentence. You always use it after a dependent clause, regardless of its length. The dependent clause here is, although typical lizards have 4 legs ending in clawed toes. Now on my prepositional phrase, I had said to you a long prepositional phrase. Well, the one in the first few lines of the second chapter is very, very long. How do you know what long is? I would say as a general rule of thumb on a prepositional phrase, anything over about 3 words, you should separate with a comma. Also, use a comma before and after an interrupting phrase instead of parentheses. My little brother, comma, who still sleeps with a nightlight, comma, proved to be the bravest one in the family that night. My interrupting phrase is, who still sleeps with a nightlight. And I set that off with commas. I also use commas with compound sentences. Remember, a compound sentence is 2 independent clauses connected by a coordinating conjunction. For, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. I hadn't studied for my math test at all, comma, but I still managed to get a B+. So right before that coordinating conjunction, I put my comma. I also use a comma with a list. Every item in the series is set off with a comma. Next semester, comma, I plan to take U.S. history, comma, English literature, comma, and introductory oil painting. Now, some writers do not put the comma before the and. So they would have next semester, comma, I plan to take U.S. history, comma, English literature, and introductory oil painting. I recommend including that comma because I think that it really does make your sentences clearer and easier to read. Turning now to apostrophes with possessive nouns. People tend to put apostrophes with plural nouns rather than possessive nouns. And that is incorrect. They're used with possessive nouns. You add an apostrophe and an S to show the possessive case of most singular nouns. For example, the book of the boy becomes the boy's book. The report of the witness becomes the witness's report. Now look at witness. It ends in S. I still follow the rule. I put apostrophe S. But you say to me, gee, that sounds a little silly. It's got 3 S's in a row. Well, if the word is difficult to say, you can drop that S. So Rozakis' program should be Rozakis apostrophe. Dickens' novels should be Dickens apostrophe. The only rule that I have there is be consistent. If you're going to drop that final S with a word that ends in S, do it on all the words that end in S. Don't do it willy-nilly, because that's going to confuse your readers. Number 2, add just an apostrophe to show the possessive case of plural nouns that end in S or ES. So the sand of the beaches is the beach's sand. BEACHES apostrophe. Add an apostrophe and an S to show the possessive case of plural nouns that do not end in S or ES. Children's toys, children is plural, the singular is child. Women's awards, plural, the singular is woman. Add just an apostrophe to show possession of compound nouns that end in S or ES. Add an apostrophe and an S if the compound noun does not end in S. Remember, a compound noun is 2 or more nouns. Girl Scouts, compound noun, Girl Scouts projects. Baker and Taylor, 2 nouns, Baker and Taylor's books. Follow the exact same rule with time and amount. 1 day's work, $1 worth, 5 minutes run, 2 cents worth. Now with pronouns, you just add an apostrophe and an S with the indefinite pronouns to show possession. Remember that an indefinite pronoun does not name a specific person, place, or thing. Another, anyone, everyone, nobody, no one, one, someone. Those are all indefinite pronouns. So another's essay, anyone's guess, everyone's gain, nobody's sweater, one's country, someone's pens. It's always apostrophe and S. So now what I would like you to do is to pause the program and add the apostrophes as needed. Then come back.